I'd like to begin by thanking Nathan for the welcome to country. It's really wonderful to hear, the story of the Land Council of Redfern. This is an incredibly important place. This is an incredibly important centre of self-determination, of activism, of strategic thinking, of community members coming from all around the state to this place, this home of the Gadigal, and thinking strategically about what do we need, what are our priorities. Thank you. Yep. Like that? Okay. Tell me if I start moving away, I'll probably wander off. I'm going to be balancing a few different things here, so hang on a second. Yep, thank you. Thank you. Okay. And I'm going to be lost without these. So I want to thank Nathan for the welcome to country. It's an extremely important protocol for us. We didn't travel, across each other's country without acknowledging and recognising, that we were in each other's country and paying respects and asking permission and understanding the practices of our people across the different nations of this country. It's really important. And as a Wiradjuri woman, I'm constantly, conscious of the fact that I am a guest as I work in my working life on the land of the Gadigal, and I think of that, on a daily basis, really, and pay my respects to the Gadigal people, to their ancestors, to their elders, and acknowledge the work and care for this place that we enjoy, that we're able to live in today, and the many, many generations that have cared for this place. And I also acknowledge the organisations like the Metropolitan Aboriginal Land Council that look after country today as well, importantly look after sites and engage in all kinds of economic activities and, importantly, cultural activities and represent this place. I want to also acknowledge Auntie Elsie, elders here today, Auntie Elsie Heiss, and thanks to Vincent de Paul for the invitation to come and speak to you. I want to acknowledge the Shadow Minister, David Harris, the Shadow Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, and all the many people from St Vincent de Paul Society. I'd probably be here for quite a while if I list you all, but I want to acknowledge you all and thank you. Thank you for the work that you do, for the work that you do in our communities, the mainstream community, Aboriginal communities. It's incredibly important work. It's a real pleasure to hear Michelle talk about Rosalie Robynne as well. To prepare for this, I did my own reading and was really impressed by, what a mighty woman in, during the French Revolution. A struggle that went on for almost her entire lifetime, and as Michelle said, on the barricades, and having created an inventory of services, the free clinic, her work among the sick, the free clinic, the childcare, the many, many services that she set up. I think it would be the envy of any community organisation today. All the services that we know are the need of people. And I think it's it's important to honour her in this year for us. It's our NAIDOC theme this year is because of her we honour the women in our community. It's it's a theme that has really resonated across the community, in the Indigenous community. It's been a wonderful opportunity to pause and think about the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the friends. For me, a lot of think about my incredibly hard-working peers, the women who are my peers, who are raising children, grandchildren, and working tirelessly with a great commitment to family and community and nation building in the sense often of our tribal, our clan nations, and nation building in the sense of this broader community in which we all live. I wanted to reflect also on the fact that we are talking about in this week of Anti-Poverty Week, and we reflect on the causes, as Kathleen was saying, the causes of homelessness. And I understand that lots of you have heard from Benjamin Law recently, about homelessness and thinking about ways to end poverty and what is the reality of poverty. For us, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, poverty has really systemic causes. The causes have their origins in colonisation, as Nathan said, and the ways in which it was initially instituted and the many ways in which it has been carried on for the last 248 years. Fundamental to colonisation is the forcible taking of land, water, animals, food sources, water sources, all the sources of sustenance. Our agricultural practices like burning to clear land and prepare seeds for harvest. Fishing using traps like the big fish traps in Wiradjuri, the eel farms that we know occupy large proportions of the land in Victoria where eels were farmed and smoked for food. Land management practices, knowledge of climate, seasons and country, now well documented by Bill Gamage and Bruce Pascoe, all disrupted by colonisation. Local people forcibly removed off their estate and into fenced, managed reserves with no work or freedom of movement, a fundamental human right. Permits required to marry or travel for seasonal work, little education for children, poor housing, and purposeful rejection of organised attempts to engage in the economy. One of the clearest examples of this, and it's a beautifully told story in Rachel Perkins' television series, The First Australians, I think it's maybe episode 2. It's the story of what happened on the Corridor Preserve in Victoria, close to the Melbourne and Healesville region. The members of the Kulin Nation at Corridor had established successful businesses, market gardens, in their home country. And they were actively involved, making multiple representations in an inquiry that the Victorian Parliament held into their right to self-determination on their country. So they had very early on, at the same time actually, as Sister Rendu was, on the barricades in the French Revolution, working with the sick. William Barrack and the members of the Kulin Nation were farming their land, selling their produce, making representations to parliamentary inquiries about their right to participate in the economy and the polity of this nation. Despite that successful enterprise and despite that stable community life, the community was dispossessed of their land and their economic endeavours were shut down. They were forced into heavily regulated dependence without their home. The extent to which William Barrack remained a proud leader and advocate in his community is an amazing lesson in resilience. So even that really strong, organised, determined economic engagement shut down, purposefully shut down, locked down. Queensland's experience is similar. No wages paid, stolen, we know about the stolen wages, effectively slavery. I don't think we like to think about slavery much in this country, but we absolutely have this strong history of slavery. Forced removal of people from their land, many taken to places like Palm Island and forced to live there. There's no work, there's no economy on Palm Island, or forced into slavery in cane fields and around the place. Not to mention the people who were stolen from their country, the Kanaks that were stolen, and other island people who were stolen from their country and forced into slavery here. In New South Wales, most Aboriginal people were deemed wards of the state and under the protection of the New South Wales government bureaucrats. They were sent to work as children, and their wages were impounded by the New South Wales government. They were paid, if they were lucky, the lousy little sixpence, while the wages were held in trust. And importantly, the New South Wales government a few years ago, and I was lucky enough to work on this process of the repayment of monies held in trust. To the extent that it was possible to show on the record and make a good judgment that the New South Wales government had held monies in trust, those monies were repaid. And that's a great thing. And there was interest, there was a certain amount of interest and recognition of the fact that the state had held the money and that it would have increased in value. But people who spoke to us said, we said, do you know whether your family got that money? And they said, we wouldn't have been living in a tent on the riverbank if we'd got that money. We know we didn't get that money. And you just think about the fact that what would people have done if they'd actually been able to access money? Women would go to the office and say, no, I want to marry, I want to have children, and they have to ask whether they could access that money to set up a home to look after their children. And what would those people have done? Had they had access to that money at the time, they would have bought vehicles, they would have bought land, they would have gone to the bank and tried to get a mortgage, they would have done, I'll talk about that, they would have started to progressively accrue the assets that are foundational to the economy that we live in. So this is a small snapshot of the 200 years of systemic exclusion from the economy, and it's easy to see that these are the causes and the ways that poverty is maintained. Each state and territory and the Commonwealth was engaged in this systemic exclusion from employment, denial of wages. And when the Union movement in the Northern Territory went in and fought for wages and recognition of wages, most of those Aboriginal stockmen were sacked because the property owners didn't want to actually pay Aboriginal people wages. So it has been this incredible systemic refusal of engagement in the economy. Neoliberal economies like ours are founded on the accrual of property to create wealth by accumulation. You accumulate it, you get it, you accumulate it, you use it and you pass it on to your heirs. So inheritance of assets is another really important component of intergenerational transfer of wealth. But when you can't accrue it in the first place, and you are locked out of skilled labour markets, you are locked out then also of that intergenerational transfer of wealth. We have 200 years of systemic and case-by-case exclusion from schools and higher education. So the capacity, if you could get into the workforce, to get better paying work, so you could save for a deposit, successfully apply for credit like a mortgage, accrue that property, and that kind of wealth in that way have been really limited by the system for us. The usual steps out of poverty, education, stable housing, capital accrual, inheritance, have all been really, really tightly, we have been actually excluded from that. They've been very inaccessible, or we've been actively excluded over a long period of time. So there have been great changes recently. It's not all, that is the majority of what's happened. That's what's happened over the majority of the period of time since colonisation.